Hey, this is Darren from Property Prosperity. Today I'd like to have a chat about building down the beach. I don't know if anyone's building at the moment, and it obviously depends on where you are as well. Actually building on sandy soil, that's why I'm talking about whether we're building a sandcastle or not, a bad thing. So I just thought I'd let you have a quick look at this property over here, and you can sort of see what I might be talking about. So I'll go around. You can see here they're actually building across the road from the beach, and you can definitely see there it's a big pile of sand. So thanks guys for joining. I can see heaps of people catching online as well, and obviously if you like what I had to say, click on the like button because I'd really appreciate it. Even if you don't like what I have to say, still click on the like button because it's really cool. Yeah, so what I want to have a chat about is if you're building on sandy soil and why that can be a good thing and a bad thing. So I don't know if many people know about Adelaide or not, but one of the things about Adelaide and building is we have really bad soil. And the reason we have bad soil is not because we have sandy soil. The reason we have bad soil is because we actually don't have sandy soil. So when we're building on a property, obviously you may or may not know, it's built on what's called a footing. So that's the big slab of concrete you see they're built on top of. And the thing about a footing, what the important thing is that it doesn't move. And so why it can be a bit of a problem when you've got footings which are moving, example wise, in Adelaide we have a lot of sandy soil. So sandy soil is going to mean that it's not sandy soil, clay soil. So what clay soil, and the reason why that's a bit of an issue is that what happens is in summertime it dries out and it really shrinks down and becomes really tight and compact. And then in wintertime, it absorbs all the water and spreads out and expands. So what that means is you've got constantly expanding and contracting. And so you imagine if you've got like a solid structure, which your footings are, big concrete structure, and when the footings are trying to deal with the soil moving all the time, if it's expanding and contracting over summer and winter, then at some point in time it would just sort of crack. And then that's when you get issues with your footings. So in Adelaide, we have this situation where we have footings which are like, 1.5 meters deep, where we're building down, trying to get to some solid foundation, so that's not going to move and not going to cause us problems down the track. So that's obviously a bit of an issue with the soil moving. And so the reason why building on sand can be a good deal is basically what it does is it absorbs the water. And so what I talked about when you have a clay soil, it sort of expands and contracts, and whereas with sand, basically when it rains, the water goes straight through the sand. And so what that means is that it's not going to have a lot of that situation where it expands and contracts. So it actually makes it a good thing to build on, and it's going to save you a lot of hassles as far as your footings go. You'll find your footings are going to be a lot shallower when you're building on sand than if you're building on clay soil, because you don't have that expanding and contracting situation. So, but the issue when you're building on sand is not so much the expanding and contracting. You imagine you're building footings. I don't know if anyone's actually seen, but you actually dig a trench down into the footings to build your footings. So when they talk about footings, there's what they call concrete beams. Beams is really when they dig a trench down, they pour concrete in it, and they call that a concrete beam. And it looks like little squares. And then on top of the little squares, they put a concrete slab, and so that's what the slab where the house sits on top of. So the situation is with sand, when you're building in sand, imagine you're trying to dig down these trenches, which they're going to fill in with concrete. Problem is, when you dig down the trenches, it doesn't hold and it keeps collapsing on itself. So you may find that even though you don't have to dig as deep as what you would for a situation where you're building clay, where it's expanding and contracting. Hey Paul, thanks for joining. I can see Chris has joined too. Thanks guys, I really appreciate it. And like I said, if you like what I had to say, click on the like button. If you know someone that's maybe trying to build and they may be building on sand, they don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, then obviously click on the share button. I'm sure they might appreciate it. So like I was saying, when you're digging trenches into sand, it continually keeps collapsing on itself. So that become a real problem when you're trying to put your trench down. So this is where you might have cost blowouts, because the issue is they have to keep trying to dig down and trying to work out how they're going to stop that sand keep collapsing on itself. So one of the things people find out is when they're trying to build, the builder gives them a quote because the engineer designs the footings for a certain depth, and then they start digging the trenches and it keeps collapsing in on itself. And you actually find the builder comes back to you with what's called a variation. They change their price, say actually it was a massive hassle us trying to put the trench in there, so we're going to charge you money. And people get really frustrated with that because everyone likes to get a fixed price footing on their build, but then they find you know, there's variations down the track, and to be honest, it's not really the builder's fault. They might have tried to be able to predict it, maybe give it a heads up saying, hey, you're building on sand, so it might be a problem. But in reality, they're not really going to know whether it's a problem or whether it's not going to be a problem. So you can see why building on sand may be a good thing, because your footings don't have to be as deep as they otherwise would if you were, you know, building on clay, where it's got all this expanding and contracting and all your footings have to be a lot deeper. So you can have shallower footings, which makes it cheaper, but you may have the situation where the sand keeps collapsing on itself and it creates a bit of a hassle for the builder, and that might be a cost variation as well. So is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Generally, it's probably going to be better than building on clay, because you don't have to dig so deep, but you might have some hassles down the track. So hopefully that all makes sense, and hopefully you understand. And obviously you may have experienced in the past where you've got a footing variation when you're building on sand, and the builders come back and said, hey, we need some more money because it's a massive hassle for us. Maybe not. Maybe you built on clay before and you found it was a massive, you weren't expecting the big cost variation because of that. So love to get your feedback, love to hear your comments, love to find out if there's something else you want to have a chat about with building. Yeah, put a comment in the comment box. Like I said, if you liked what I had to say, put a like in there. If you haven't liked it, still put a like, because I really appreciate it. And if you know someone that's building, maybe click on the share button, because maybe they'll get some use out of it down the track too. So thanks guys, I look forward to catching you again.